So Gloriana is an assistant lecturer and researcher at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at the College of Informatics and Virtual Education, and an AI enthusiast as well. She facilitates courses such as database management system, systems analysis and design, operating systems, software engineering, and mobile development, supervising students doing AI stroke machine learning related topics and system development projects. She has fairly an experience on research projects and consultancies, among other projects and consultancies that she has been involved in. Um, so over to you, Gloriana.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, happy Women's Day to all the women around the world. Thank you so much, Mahadia and Philomena, for giving me an opportunity to be part of this dialogue on this very important day of women. So my presentation will focus on responsible AI, and I'm here representing the Anglophone AI4D lab, which was soon launched and is one of the two labs which have been funded by the IDRC and CEDA. And so I'll be taking you through this presentation as what Philomena introduced me. So I work at the Department of Computer Science, and my name's Gloriana Monko, and at the working as a liaison manager at the Artificial Intelligence for Development Anglophone African Lab. So my presentation really is going to focus more on these four topics. Why do we have to discuss about responsible AI? I'll go quickly through the principles of responsible AI, but again, from the principles to practices, what has to be done, but also speaking a little bit on what Anglophone AI4D lab plans on helping the implementation of AI for dLab the project in a very responsible AI manner. So I will start introducing, when we speak of responsible AI, actually we speak of the practice for designing, developing, and deploying AI with good intention to empower every business process in a fairly manner. So we know that AI is a new technology which has been, actually it has one of those fourth industrial revolution technologies which are coming forth in a very speed way, and most of the organizations or companies have not well embraced the AI technology in this manner, and probably most because of the fear, probably people are not they're not trusting these AI systems. And my discussion really focused on how are we helping or allowing these organizations and companies to engender trust and scale AI with confidence without fearing, as we know that most of the people are afraid that the AI is going to take away the job, but again, they are not trusting the technology in different aspects. So how are we helping them to understand that these systems are safe for them, and they can also be helpful in improving the efficiency of most of the business processes. So to be precise, the goal for responsible AI focuses more only on the ethical part and the democratization part. So we focus on reducing the risk that the risk that can actually be caused by those systems that we are developing. So how are we putting this how are we discussing this on and see the better way of doing these things? I mean, the better way of performing and reducing the biases in these systems so that they can act responsibly and they can also be safe for the consumers or the users of these systems. So I'll focus, I'll go quickly to the principles of responsible AI, and probably later we're going to have more discussion on this. So speaking of the principle of responsible AI, we speak of very different aspects, and one of it is privacy and security, that we need to develop the AI systems that can be secured and they can also respect the privacy of people. So most of the speakers, they have spoken about this at the in the legal aspect and at the human perspective on how these systems can be secured, they can be reliable to the people that are using. So likewise here, one of the principles of responsible AI is that we are supposed to develop systems or the AI products that are able to ensure the people the security and also respect the privacy. So how we making sure that we have this in place. This should be a discussion in this dialogue. And as Africans, as we are trying to embrace this technology, how are we making sure that we also protect our people, but also the security of these systems? For instance, if you speak of an AI system, how can it be secured? How can it be not be probably not to allow the system to be hacked easily or to be tempered so that it can actually make our decision as expected. So again, speaking of the principle, and another principle is fairness. So we need these AI systems to be able to treat people fairly. So in all aspects. So how will these AI systems treat all these people fairly? I could give an example of an application which was a facial recognition application developed by Microsoft, which actually couldn't do so much better in identifying, or it didn't perform better in identifying the darker skin tone, but rather the lighter skin tone. So it wasn't the issue of resist or something like that. Probably the data which were used were biased. So how are we avoiding this kind of thing not affecting the models that we are developing? That we develop the models that can actually treat people fairly, because they had to go and improve this kind of application in order to treat people fairly, because initially it could actually perform better to detect a skin tone, a lighter skin tone better for a man, for a male, but it was not performing better with, it was really performing worse with female with darker skin. So how are we helping in avoiding these kind of mistakes? So I think it is a call for us to think about these kind of issues, that if we are to develop these kind of systems, how are we going to make sure that we develop the systems which are fair and they can also treat people equally? And coming to the issue of inclusivity, or how are we ensuring the inclusiveness of these AI systems? Starting with how we can tackle the problem of bias in AI, but also how are we going to address these issues of bias when training the ML models so that they cannot cause major, or they cannot cause major or challenges or problems when, for instance, if you are to diagnose a patient and probably your data are biased and they are not performing very well in one class, so that means that we are expecting at the end of the day to have a negative consequence of those systems. So how are we avoiding these kind of things? But again, on the issue of inclusivity, as most of the people have also discussed on the issue of gender being part of gender being one of the features to be considered when developing these models. That, for instance, you're developing a model that can actually maybe it has to diagnose patients differently. For instance, maybe the symptoms for a woman and the symptoms for a man are different. And if you're tackling that kind of problem, if you're having bias in your data, how are you expecting this model to perform effectively or to perform better? So these are the
Gloriana,
issues that, yes.
sorry to interject. Kindly note that time is almost up.
Okay, I'm writing quickly. So these are
Okay.
the issues that we need to take on board, but also we need to look at the transparent aspect. How are we going to make sure that these systems are well understandable? They can be self-explanatory if our user has to understand. So how are we taking these on board? But again, the reliability and safety of these systems. But there's another issue of trustworthy AI, like if we are to discuss, if we are to develop these kind of systems, who is to bear the full responsibility if these intelligent agents work unintendedly? Probably they didn't perform as expected. Who is to be who is to be accountable for that? So I think it's an issue of developing some standards and for trustworthy AI systems on how we can perform or we can actually monitor these kind of systems or applications that are developed so that we know exactly that if anything goes wrong, there is a responsible authority or there is a responsible or person to be accountable for that. So I think this should open another discussion later. So how are we putting these principles to practices? How are we making sure that we have created an environment that is conducive for responsible AI? I think this is one thing that we have to consider. So in the technical part, how are we engaging the stakeholders throughout the process, throughout the analysis, co-design and co-creation? So I think it is important for domain experts and the technical experts to work together in order to have these kind of systems which can actually address our users' needs instead of focusing on only one part of the technical team. But again, in the operational, how are we creating the conducive environment that fosters AI uptake? Thinking of the data accessibility, the data protection policies, and all those kind of aspects. So how are we putting this forth in making sure that we have a conducive environment that foster AI uptake? But again, organization at the organization level, how are we raising awareness and concerns with AI systems to the users so that they can understand and they can be part of the process or part of the part of exploring the challenges around the communities. So as one of the responsibility in AI4D lab, the Anglophone AI4D lab, we have had some initial stage that we are putting forth into making sure that we are making sure that we are having this responsible AI aspect in place, and we have and every aspect is considered during the developing these AI systems. So we put forth on ensuring the inclusivity, especially on the gender and marginalized group inclusion, but also looking at how we can add or we can contribute to African origin data sets if we want to solve our local challenges. That means we need to also use our local data set. So how are we making sure that we have our local data set that cannot lead to bias systems? So that is one thing that we are going to focus on having the data repository that will actually help in addressing the African origin data set. but also emphasizing on the transparency and code sharing. But again, helping to push forward on having the AI policy. For instance, for Tanzania, we really don't have an AI policy currently, but how are we making sure that we have this AI policy that it can actually help us in accessing the data and also to protect the data sharing of these developed models. So these are the issues that we look forward to implement in helping or implementing the AI systems which are responsible. And at the end of the day, we're expecting to have the kind of system, the kind of policies that can actually enhance, or they can actually put forth on how we can have these kind of systems which are secure, which are human-centered, which are unbiased, but also, they can be justifiable, but they can also be monitored. So this is the center of this discussion, and I guess from that end, I will end my presentation.